so this, just watch this, watch this.
Once upon a time, America made everything. Cars, here. TVs, here. Shoes, yes. Your grandma's orthopedic sandals were made here.
Ni hao!
All right, so I need to know what you guys think about this video. I was over on the other platform and just looking through everything people are saying about the tariffs and what's going on in China. And all right, so this, just watch this, watch this. I don't know why it just like slays me so much, but it has to do with like the element of truth that is in this. Yeah, it's obviously like AI generated, but like to everyone that's like, we want our factory jobs back. It's like, I don't know if you do. I don't think you do. Matter of fact, maybe it's a dark humor of me. Like, I just, that just slays me. It's just so interesting to see what China really thinks about us. But
once upon a time, America made everything. Cars, here. TVs, here. Shoes, yes. Your grandma's orthopedic sandals were made here, right in the good old USA. But somewhere between the 70s and the 2000s, politicians decided that cheap international labor was just too good to pass up. Now, both parties played a part, but let's call it what it is. Republicans led the way with their deregulation and their free market talk. You know, they love that stuff. Democrats, they didn't fight too hard either. Clinton signed NAFTA in the 90s, and then boom, it was on and popping. Factories started packing their bags like they were late for a flight. They said it would create jobs, and technically it did, just not here. Well, unless you count the call centers and the warehouses as the American dream. Now we're hooked on cheap imports, we can't fix our supply chains, and we wonder why stuff feels like it's cheap, but it costs us more money. That's how. We traded quantity for quality, and we wonder why we can't find a screwdriver that lasts longer than a TikTok trend. So the next time a politician says, we're bringing jobs back, make sure you ask them how, because you were the one who sent all of those jobs packing. Do you ever think they're really going to be able to bring back jobs, or do you think we're just too deep in this global game?
China is using their secret weapon in the ongoing trade war with the United States, but no one in the mainstream media is talking about this. The media is only focused on the tariffs, 125% on China, 84% tariffs back on the United States. But China just hit America very hard, and it has nothing to do with tariffs. China just decided to offload $50 billion worth of their U.S. treasuries, meaning that they now own the lowest level of U.S. bonds at any point since 2009. This is an action that scares the living hell out of those in Washington, D.C. and on Wall Street. It's called de-dollarization, but now China is kicking up the gear to 11 because the Chinese government has also told all of the banks in China to stop purchasing U.S. dollars. In taking this action, China is not only shoring up the Chinese yuan, but also they are protecting their economy from any potential negative ramifications by these U.S. tariffs. In addition to that, China is in effect weakening the dollar on the global stage and the dollar's exchange rate. They are reducing demands for U.S. Treasury bonds, which means that the U.S. actually has to take on more interest to pay off its national debt. This move will also increase inflationary pressures in the United States. It also signals to countries all across the world who are pursuing de-dollarization that the dollar is no longer a supreme king. And this is going to further accelerate de-dollarization all across the globe, which, you know, is kind of important because the U.S. only maintains its economic supremacy across the globe by cycling dollars into economies and forcing them to buy U.S. Treasury bonds. While the United States is playing checkers with this whole tariff war game, China is playing a game of Wei Qi, and they are winning big time.
So I just stumbled across a video that said, what would happen if China stops buying US debts? And it ties everything into what's happening currently. And here is why and how China has been playing chess and not checkers, and how Donald Trump is going to fuck this up for everybody, and how China's going to win. So number one, China used to be the number one buyer of US debts up until 2018. So what is the US debt? It's a security, and securities are used to finance the US government's obligations. So a security, it's bought in the form of a treasury bill, note, or bond. So treasury bills, those are for short-term debts. Treasury notes, those are mid-term. Treasury bonds are for long terms. So this kind of started back in 1966 when the US started going into all of this debt, and now it's up to around $36 trillion. The reason that China was buying all of these debts is because, number one, it was seen as safe because a lot of other markets or countries were investing in the United States, and it was a wide market. So meaning it's global trading from the US dollar. In the 2000s is when China said, fuck this, we are about to go ham on this market, and they started exporting more than they imported. We started buying from China. China was creating and we were consuming it up, which means China was getting a lot of US dollars. They were getting all the dollars, and they said, what should we do with that dollar? We should turn around and reinvest it in the United States, i.e. that's how they became the number one owner of the United States. 2013 was the decline for China because that's when they decided to implement something called, they invested in Belt and Roads Initiative, which means they were building an economic road between Asia, Europe, Africa, and beyond, other countries outside the United States. 2013, they said, y'all playing too many games over there. It's time for us to take our power back, because we can play games too. So you may not be familiar with that one, but you should be familiar with BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, because these people said, fuck the US. The people be saying the West, they really mean the US. So China has been building up economies amongst other nations because they're sick of being played by the United States. And on top of that, China has been pulling their money out of the US and investing in gold instead, using gold as the standard. Where does that sound familiar? You know, back in Africa. Okay, so tying that back into where we are, this part really doesn't matter because it just doesn't. Tying that back into where we are now. China has been building this plan since 2013 for a time like this, for a time when a person like Donald Trump gets into power and tries to strong arm some people. They're 12 years deep in this investment with other nations. Other nations have those plans. The U.S. don't have those plans. They're not a part of BRICS. They're not a part of Belt and Roads Initiative. I hope it's clicking. I hope it's clicking. He can stand on that stage and lie all he wants. And this is for anybody still trying to support him. He stands and lies, but the facts remain the same. China said we don't give a fuck because we already had a plan in place. Y'all better buckle up, baby. Buckle up. And I can't wait to see China win. This is a good show.
Okay, it's important that we understand this. You're stating that the tariffs on China are going to hurt China because America is the biggest buyer in the world, and you are telling China you're no longer going to shop at their store. It is logical It makes sense. However, it is not applicable to geopolitics, to macroeconomics, to domestic conditions when we consider the US currency, its valuation, and how it operates. And that is what I'm going to explain to you. Things are not as simple as I'm the biggest buyer, I don't buy from you. Things are way more complicated in understanding this. China is the biggest seller because they've structured their economy to be a seller. The United States is the biggest buyer because they've structured their economy to be funded by other people, by other nations, they have the world reserve currency to allow other nations, by them using their money, to fund the United States' deficits and debt. That is how the US has set up its economy. China has set up its economy to be able to export things for cheap. That's one. When we consider the relationship between China and the United States, this is a mutually beneficial relationship. The United States has high advanced technology. The United States has IP. The United States has things that are important. And China has manufacturing capability, and China has a cheaper labor force. These two things allow them to maintain dominance internationally when we consider it for their production capability. China supports the United States' economy. China supports millions of jobs in the United States' economy. China also holds lots of US bonds. They've been liquidating their bonds more and more as things have escalated with the US, but they do hold US bonds. China is also the most important person in Asia, where all of our allies are. They're the most important person to South Korea, to Japan. They're the most important person, well, not really the Philippines, but to Indonesia, to all of the ASEAN nations. China is their big dog. That's like trying to say Mexico should look to China and say, that's my big dog. It makes no sense. Why would the ASEAN nations look to the United States as their big dog when the US is over there and China is right there in their neighborhood? So when the US has these relationships and these deals with Japan, with Korea, with the Philippines, with Taiwan, when the US does this stuff, they are intervening into China to try and control China. That is what they're doing. They're locking China in through the island chains. They've planned this for a long time. And they're doing it to try and collapse China, but it hasn't worked. China has gotten stronger. China does more trade with the rest of the world than they do with the United States. So if we cut off the relationship of China and the United States, it will damage China, but it will damage the United States more. The problem is that the United States has a fundamental way of thinking. The way of thinking is that I am a nation that is only 4 to 5% of the world's population, but I deserve to be able to control the entire world. That is the way of thinking from the United States. When they want something in the Middle East, they invade the Middle East, go to war with nations to achieve their objectives. When the United States wants Eastern Europe and to invade Russia, the United States funds military coups, the United States sends the CIA, the United States sends diplomats and non-government organizations, NGOs, to lead to the overthrow of democratic leadership in Europe, in Africa, in Asia. The United States used the International Criminal Court, that is not stopping the genocide with Netanyahu in Israel, but it did arrest a Filipino leader because the Filipino leader wanted closer ties with China. The United States manages the international bodies. They manage the United Nations. They manage the ICC. They manage the ICJ. The United States, a small nation of 4 to 5% of the population, has dominated the entire world. It is a logic that makes no sense, but that is the position the US is in. Now that China, a nation that is 1.4 billion people and has the economy to back it up and has the advancements to back it up, has been growing and is growing over the planet and is offering a different methodology to doing deals with other nations. Instead of saying I'm a billion population nation and I'm going to run the world like the United States, they go, I'm a billion population, let's all get rich together. It is a different philosophy. And the United States cannot beat this philosophy. So that is why the US placed these tariffs on China. And they place these tariffs not only on China, but on the entire world, because the world is considering to de-dollarize from the United States. Everything I just explained earlier in the video, the fact that the US functions as a country and the fact that the US is as rich as it is because it forces the world to subsidize the United States' economy. And the reason the United States is placing the tariffs is because that core foundation, that principle of the US's international relations is weakening. More and more nations are considering not using the US dollar. And the reason that is because when Russia went to war with Ukraine, no matter how you feel about Russia, the United States took away Russia's money. The rest of the world said the big bad bully who used nuclear weapons against Japan when Japan was already defeated, they are a nation that will bomb people. They are a nation that will kill civilians. They are a nation that is committing genocide. They are a nation that has done hundreds of thousands of attacks in nations, is willing to do whatever it takes to survive. They said, I need to figure out a new option. And this is why we see new emerging international payment systems. China has created a CBDC. They have created a digital yuan, and they have already shipped it out to those Asian nations that are in their neighborhood. And they have shipped it out to the Asian nations in the Middle East. And they have offered them this ability to do trade outside of the US dollar. This is a major threat for the US. If China sells their treasuries, which are the bonds that hold the US economy together, it will crash, or technically it will make the yield too high for US bonds. So this whole idea of thinking the United States is the one that is in the position of leverage is incorrect. The United States is reacting to what is happening with China and the rest of the world. This is a reactionary response because China is now a real threat, and the US's only way to deal with this threat is to go to war with them and try and dismantle their economy. War doesn't first start with military intervention. War will start on the economic front. War will start on the political front, as it already has been for like a decade, 2 decades now. War will start on all of these fronts, on cyber fronts, like as far as cyber technology and wars through cyber criminals and hacking and stuff, and then eventually military conflict. So I hope this video kind of paints a picture more clear over the realities of what is happening between the United States and China, and why the tariffs are happening. Because other nations like Europe are also trying to de-dollarize. They're also trying to grow their economies. These economies have de-industrialized to benefit the United States, and the US wants them to de-industrialize again. That means shutting down factories in their countries, like cutting jobs and funding and money in their countries to put funding and money in the United States instead. This is a relationship that is parasitic. It does not benefit the nations, it benefits the US, but they've had the power to force nations to do that. And now it's really a question of, will the United States still maintain this power if the rest of the world says, I don't want the 4% of the population nation to bully me around?
Yo, have you guys realized how every Chinese blogger on TikTok is snitching? They're snitching on all these big brands and telling the people how they get things for cheap from China and then bring them to like United States or other countries and then just change the logo and then sell it at a higher price, like 15 times the price. Yeah, I don't know what's going on, but I don't think we're gonna have TikTok for long because this snitching is getting out of the way. Like every Chinese blogger that I see on TikTok right now, they're snitching. They're going hard. And I don't know what's coming, but this is crazy. Looks like all these big brands are gonna be calling for the closure of TikTok as soon as possible, because these guys are snitching. They're telling on these brands, and
How do we profit under a 145% US tariffs? Smuggling? No, a safer and more legal method than smuggling. Personal shopping service. You can travel to China, act as an agent to purchase products for your American friends and clients, and then avoid that tariff by declaring them as personal items when you return to the US, thus earning a high profit margin. Want to learn more? Follow me, I'm a Chinese freight forwarding agent. For more details, please visit GoNest.
For a while now, I've been wondering what could be the real reason behind the TikTok ban that President Trump have been pushing forward. Yeah, but with what is happening right now, we are so sure that this was the bigger plan. So this is something that started a long time ago. So the old tariffs games that has been played all throughout these years, throughout this period, should I say, had to do with what is happening right now. We can see clearly, but who is China? China has a greater plan. Everything is already in place. If it's not working, they know how to work around things. And I am so glad to see how these people are not reactive. They have plans. They plan in advance before they issue a statement. They already have a solution to everything, and they know how things are supposed to move. And right now, you can travel to China. They have return taxes. Everything is being put in place. They will go out of their way to ensure that what defines them as a country continue going on. They are there to supply, and they will supply regardless of who says what, because that's what defines them. They have clear boundaries. It's exciting to watch this show. Like, as we're watching from a distance, we are really proud. We are proud of China. Personally, I'm proud of China. What are your thoughts on this compilation? Do not hesitate to leave your thoughts in the comment section. Why don't you like the video for recommendation? Subscribe if you're new here. Also share your thoughts. Kindly, we're here to interact. What do you think about this?